Hello, good evening. Welcome back. Glad to have you back. My name's Terry Jacqueline. I'm a naturopathic doctor, functional medicine practitioner, and I've been living with MS myself for about 33 years. And this is a forum for us to talk about ways to manage MS, because we know now it can be a very manageable condition, and move forward together as a group, share as a community, and learn from one another. So I thought I had a great idea for tonight. And then, of course, Emily said to me, why don't you do something about fear and anxiety and the diagnosis of MS? So that's what I want to do. I want to hear from you guys. So rising to Emily's challenge, I'm hoping to address fear and anxiety and the role it plays in MS, and what we can do to mitigate that fear and anxiety, because really it plays such a vital role in our health. And I say our health very specifically because we must never forget that we've all been raised in a disease care model and in a culture that's focused on disease. And I hope you had a chance to look at the post that I posted on the Facebook page last night about being inspired by the Olympians. And every 4 years, I am just reminded how freaking amazing the body is and what it can do to heal. So I'm going to tie that back in a moment, but let's start talking about the anxiety. So what happens when we get a diagnosis? Our world falls apart, right? Everything that we know, that we could trust and just take for granted, is taken away. And we can't fix it, right? That's what we want to do. We just want to fix everything up so that everything is back to normal. But the fact is, we have a new reality. And that new reality is, oh my, we need to start paying attention to ourselves. But before we can get there, we're stuck in this place of anxiety. And that might actually be amplified by any number of things. Maybe you have a pre-existing state of PTSD, for example, which is an anxiety situation that very, very, very many people have. Maybe anxiety is what you had patterned for you by your parents or by your family. Maybe, and this is, in the new neuroscience, we know that anxiety, depression, any kind of mental states can be imprinted in our DNA, and we can get transgenerational anxiety as well. So we can, so for example, I'm an immigrant kid. There's lots of immigrant kids in both sides of the border, in Canada and the US. Those parents probably lived through a war or some other reason that drove them to leave their country to find something better. So we can have all of these playing themselves out in the background and perpetuating that anxiety loop. So, the question becomes, how do we step into that loop? And, chances are we're never really going to get 100% rid of anxiety, but what we want to be able to do is control it and understand that when it flares up, we can say, I like Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk. I don't know if you all know Thich Nhat Hanh. I love him to pieces, but he'll be able to meet anxiety as an old friend and say, oh, anxiety, what are you doing here today? So that's our goal, to be able to get to the place that we can look at that anxiety and say, what's going on here? So where to go here? I've got a million things I want to say, and I don't know that I'm going to say them in the right order or anything, but I want to remind you all as well that anxiety is MS, since it was first named in the 1860s, was connected to the stress response in a very negative way. And really, anxiety is taking us into the stress response. So it may be a response to a diagnosis, but it's also a perpetuator of a negative health state that will dramatically impact that diagnosis. So, okay. Sorry, I do have my notes because I always scribble things down that I don't want to forget to say. What's super interesting right now is that in the last 20 years, the body of knowledge in neuroscience has doubled, and it's given us all kinds of opportunities for understanding how the brain functions and how the brain is connected to the body. And that's kind of new to our current medical model too, because in our current medical model, the brain was, or the mind was simply a function of the brain and didn't really have anything to do with the rest of the body. And now we know that everything that goes on in our heads is played out somehow in our physiology. I did my first mind-body training down at Harvard in 2006. So Harvard, you know, the harbinger of the medical elite probably in the world. And I did that training at the Harvard Institute for Mind-Body Medicine. So, you know, in some of the elite medical institutions are starting to see that come about. But I remember this slide that I have since ripped off and used many, many, many times. And it was just a good old-fashioned pie chart. And in that pie chart, there was a piece that represented 40%, and that 40% represented the amount of time we mentally spend in the past, worrying about stuff that's already happened, water under the bridge, spilt milk, whatever you want to call it. We invest 40% of our energy, our mental energy there. That slide had a piece then that was 50%, and that 50% represented the amount of time we spend our mental energy fretting about stuff in the future, stuff that hasn't even happened yet, may never happen, but we invest all kinds of mental energy there. And that leaves that tiny slice of 10% to be absolutely present in the present moment. And that's where life happens. That's where healing happens, is right here in the present moment. And these might be starting to sound like words that you're hearing.
Speaking of your present, there's your present.
Thank you. You know, we're starting to hear these words more and more because more and more main medical universities have mind-body programs, mindfulness training that actually just try to bring us to be present in ourselves. And I think that a good place to start with that is the concept of self-compassion. So here's fear and anxiety. You've heard the concept that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Well, the equal and opposite to fear and anxiety is trust and love. And this is where I'm coming back to that post I was talking about that I did last night about the Olympics, about the Olympians. And specifically, I mentioned a story about a Canadian snowboarder, but this, you hear this story all the time in elite athletes, is that they sustain what the experts will call career terminating injuries. You may never walk again. You'll never do this again. You'll never do that again. And not only do they come back, but they come back to the Olympic medal status. And to me, that's the quintessence of self-love, self-compassion, self-connection, knowing and trusting the body and believing beyond a shadow of a doubt that it's going to be great again. And that's what we lack. That's what we lack to a large degree, right? We lack that trust because everybody's always making us feel lesser than. And certainly when we're diagnosed, what do we get? We get, oh yeah, I don't know what you got, but I'll tell you what I got. I got, we stopped counting your lesions at 25. And, you know, you really ought to go home and get your affairs in order. I was 25 years old. I didn't know what going home and getting my affairs in order meant. So I lived deliriously happily in what I call selective denial for 15 years until my body said, by the way, you're not being very compassionate with me. So, we get that fear hammered in. And hello, everybody who's joining. And we need to move around that. We need to move from that place of fear and anxiety into a place of trust. Okay, how? I get it. I'm going to go through this. And really what I want to do is, just like last Monday, get into some lovely questions, okay? So we talked about being in the present moment. Well, how do you get into the present moment if you're all wrapped up in anxiety and your anxiety is taking you away, really? The first thing, I've got company here. It's Sylvester. Hello, Sylvester. Can you say hi to everybody? What's that? He was on the camera for a minute there. Anyway, the first thing to do is breathe. And what are we doing? When we breathe, we're stopping, we're pausing. We're being a little bit self-compassionate, right? Instead of being carried away by the anxiety, no, I'm not playing with you. We are getting grounded, taking a nice deep breath. I used to work with this girl, and I could tell when she was working through anxiety because she would always say, that's interesting. And I thought at the time, I remember thinking, you're just buying time, honey. That interesting doesn't really mean anything. No, it was absolutely helping her to be grounded in the present moment. And so now I encourage people to take a deep breath and say, interesting, instead of, oh my God, or yikes, or whatever it is that you're inclined to say. In fact, finding that point of stillness on a regular basis in your day is a great way to proactively manage anxiety. So we talk about meditation. It can be prayer. It can be walks in nature. It can be whatever brings you to a point of stillness. And in our house, my husband is very quick to remind me that, oh, Terry, I don't think you've been doing your meditation lately. And it's usually when I'm doing a little bit more freaking out than I usually do.
Yeah.
He wants to add.
If you don't meditate for that day, Terry knows that she hasn't meditated. She's not grounded. If you don't meditate for 2 days, then Terry and her husband knows that she's not grounded. If you don't meditate for a week,
everybody knows
that you're not grounded.
So, and that's so true. If you don't meditate for a day, I know. If I don't meditate for a couple of days, he knows. If I don't meditate for a week, y'all know. So finding that point of stillness. And, I hear all kinds of crap around that. I can't meditate. My mind's too busy. I don't meditate, but I turn the TV off for 20 minutes in the afternoon. That's not meditation. Meditation is actually getting grounded, connecting to yourself. And you know what? Your mind's going to wander. People say, oh, my mind's too busy to meditate. Well, of course your mind's busy. We all live in this crazy world that, now that I said it last time, I'll say it again. We measure and reward ourselves based on what we do. And there's no value seen in the non-doing. But it's in that non-doing that we heal. It's in that non-doing that we manage the anxiety that is changing our physiology in a negative kind of way. So how do you start that? You know what? There's all kinds of apps to do that now. I've got one, knowing me, it's probably the oldest one out there. It's called calm.com, CALM.com. I like it because it has a free version and a paid version. But there's other ones. Headspace, I think, is another one. But you can probably just Google meditation apps and find all kinds of them. There's a lovely website from a woman in Australia it's called fragrantheart.com. That's fragrantheart.com. And she has dozens of meditations that you can stream, or you can pay a couple of bucks and download them if you want to, from her website. And she also has a free Learn How to Meditate for Free course, and like in 5 days or something. It's like a 5-session course. So instead of putting up that resistance and saying, hello, Saskatchewan, instead of saying, I can't do that, I can't do that, cut yourself some slack, show yourself some self-compassion, and say, you know what? I need to learn how to do that. And it's not going to be easy. I've been meditating for years, and there's still days that I am making a grocery list while I'm meditating, or thinking about something I've got to do when I get into the clinic. And you know, Jack Kornfield said it best. He once said, the mind, if left unattended long enough, is like a little puppy. It'll wander off. So instead of beating that puppy or beating yourself up by saying, oh, I can't do this, or this is ridiculous, just gently coach it back. So every time you catch yourself wandering off, or maybe getting a wave of anxiety come over you, then just take another deep breath, refocus yourself, and continue that meditation, or continue that breathing. You don't have to call it meditation if you don't want to. Just call it deep breathing. It takes exactly 3 deep belly breaths to switch your brain out of the stress response, which includes anxiety and fear and dread and all of that kind of stuff, into the relaxation response. And that's a fact. And another fact is that every culture in the world has a documented history of that activity, whatever it is, to still the mind, except for the North American one, where we measure and reward ourselves based on what we do. And there's no value seen in the non-doing. So, taking a deep breath. Interesting. Injecting that instead of, oh my God, or whatever it is. Finding a point of stillness every day. You know, I had another patient who was very objectionary about meditation, just because she said, I can't meditate. And we continued talking, and, you know, she spent every single day in the swimming pool doing laps. Guess what? That was her meditation. That was her point of stillness. That's where she didn't think about anything else. I remember another time that I actually missed a yoga class, and I emailed my yoga instructor and I said, I'm really sorry I missed that class. I got caught up in my gardening because I was out in the garden. And she emailed me back and she said, no worries. You were meditating. You were in your garden. You were in your happy place, in your quiet place. So, you know, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to, you know, be sitting on the top of K2 with your legs crossed and completely zoned out. You just need to find that point of stillness. Hi, Linda. Remember the connection between food and mood too. This is a huge area of study right now. So if you're suffering from anxiety or depression, take a look at your food and start to clean your food up, because we know that has a tremendous impact on anxiety. So what's going in the gut is affecting the brain, and that's a concept that you're going to hear me repeating in probably every single time we talk about, you know, health in general. If you need some help, because it's training, it's retraining the brain, you know, and really that's exactly what it is. That base in neuroscience that I said has doubled in the last 20 years includes the concept of neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is simply rewiring. So if you're wired for anxiety, what we want to do is wire you for peace and joy and calm. And you know what? Sometimes you might need some help with that. You can I mean, there's a wonderful flower essence remedy out there called Rescue Remedy. And I've got a bottle here. This is not Rescue Remedy. This is something else I have in the clinic that's a little bit stronger. But, you know, when I was a corporate weenie, I had a bottle of Rescue Remedy everywhere. I had one in every suit pocket. I had one in the top drawer of my desk. I had one in my purse. I had one in my car. And, you know, to have a spray every once in a while when you need to just take the edge off while you're doing your retraining the brain, not such a bad idea, right? And if you need more help, there are lots of drug-free options now. You know, people, we know, especially with all the news now on benzodiazepines, you know, like lorazepam, Ativan, and all of those things are really have become things that we want to stay away from. Even the physicians aren't prescribing them like they used to, but there are lots of drug-free options for that. I wanted to also mention, did I talk about reacting versus responding?
I believe so, a little bit, yeah.
Oh, I did. Okay. Sorry. I need to.
I hope so.
Okay. Well, I'm going to cover it again then really quickly. The difference between reacting and responding. Well, yeah, indirectly I have. So taking that deep breath, doing the interesting. Whenever I think of, you know, how I want to respond versus react to things, I think of the former US President Barack Obama, because I think he was a master at cool, calm responses instead of knee-jerk reactions. So just think about the difference there, and how can you bring yourself from the place of doing a knee-jerk reaction to responding. And I think of him often sitting there, you know, just like this, and thinking before he did anything, before he moved forward at all. Okay.
Can I share an example?
Yeah.
Of somebody who was a bit of a tyrant. I know they can probably hear me. And it was one of these where I stopped and I looked at the person and said, wow, I almost let you get me upset.
Exactly.
And the response that I got was completely eye-opening. It just diffused that whole power over thing.
Right.
And I had no emotion around it whatsoever.
Yeah.
I looked at the person and said,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
understand what you're doing, but I'm not buying your stress.
And you know, the point Mike is making is a good one. It's you're giving your power away, right? You're giving your power, your personal power, over to that anxiety instead of being grounded and breathing and being calm.
And being aware.
And being aware.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, let me scan this. I think I've made all of my points here. So now I'd like to have, oh, I forgot one point too. Hi, Nora Pope. How are you doing? A practice of gratitude is another great way of dissipating our anxiety. And, you know, I often, when I'm reviewing test results with somebody, or, you know, we focus in on what's wrong, what's abnormal, what's bad, instead of focusing on what's good and what's perfect and what's wonderful. And, you know, we can work that into our everyday, you know, anxiety fighting practices as well, which is just stop and think of 3 things that you're grateful for. In fact, some people keep a gratitude journal. Some people have a gratitude practice of when they open their eyes in the morning, they espouse 3 things they're grateful for, and when they go to bed at night, they talk about 3 things that they're grateful for. I steal an idea that I heard from Wayne Dyer before he died, and he just isn't even specific. He just says, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, you know, whenever I'm starting to feel anxious or distracted, I'll just ground myself and say, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I would like now to hear from you. And because I know anxiety can run rampant in MS, I think there's a lot of things that we can also do. I'll just keep talking while you
formulate the question.
Formulate your questions. Yeah. because the whole picture that we have painted around MS is actually outdated now. So another thing you're going to hear me talk about over and over again is what I call the therapeutic gap that exists right now. We've got this magnificent evidence base, and of course everybody wants the science, but that evidence base is still years away from the regular doctor's office, and in no area is that more obvious than anything that has to do with the brain, and certainly multiple sclerosis. Instead of treating it as this incurable, ridiculous thing that has only got one direction, and that is down, we know that it can be a very manageable condition. And I want you to think, if you haven't read the post about the Olympians that I posted last night, please go back and read it, because it reminds us that we've been raised in a disease-focused model. We've not been programmed for health. So what we want to do is reprogram ourselves for health. Emily, I'm so wired for anxiety. I've had a harder week this week symptom-wise and had really been making good progress. I don't have years of MS experience to draw on. So how can you manage the anxiety when your symptoms are back? When you have had a decline? I hate the whole idea that this is the nature of the disease. I'm getting older. I have to get further back here because I just want to move forward, and that makes you feel like relapses are out of your control. You know what? The bottom line is relapses are out of your control. So why do what can you do to control them? It's about, especially for you, Emily, this is still so new. And for people who this is so new for, when I was diagnosed, I had a wonderful neurologist. Finally, I had to fire a couple to get to him. But he said to me, Terry, you know what? We can't even start to talk about what MS means to you or how good you are or how bad you are until we watch what's going on for the first 2 years. And, I try to share that message with people when I talk to them too. It's going to be a lot of realization, and it's going to be a lot of this, Emily. So once again, come back to the point. I know you read that post because you put that beautiful comment on it. So connect with that. So connect with the fact that your body has an absolutely innate capacity to heal, and health is your birthright. So here you are right now. It's not a good place. You're not happy. You're not comfortable. You feel out of control. You're not going to be able to push the disease away. You're not going to be able to get rid of that disease. What I want you to think about is bringing more health in. So this is what's happened. The MS is what's happened. And it's going to be accompanied by ups and downs and blips and stuff while you're going. But just focus on bringing more health in. And in your case, you tell me you're hardwired for anxiety. Well, guess what? From all that neuroscience that we're talking about, one of the biggest things that we know is you can rewire your brain. So just as you feel you're hardwired for anxiety, you can rewire yourself for calm and for peace. It's not going to happen overnight. And like I said, it's going to be a lifelong thing. Anxiety is not something that's going to go away overnight, and nor should you expect it to. But, Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Buddhist monk who lives in Plum Village in France, he has a beautiful lecture on anxiety. So Google him, will you? Thich Nhat Hanh. I don't know how to spell it without writing it down, but that's a good first step for you. Michelle.
You already answered Michelle's question.
Oh, yeah.
She said, damn, you're good.
I was reading your mind.
So back to Emily, what do you do when you have a setback, Terry? First of all, I know that you recognize it and say, I know this is 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And you're not going to let it go 2 steps back.
Right.
You meditate, you ground.
Exactly. And I slow down. So
and smile.
Absolutely. you know, all of those things that I just said. Just ground yourself, be grateful, breathe, connect with your body, understand that your body's ability to heal exceeds anything that you've ever been trained to believe, because we've been trained to put the responsibility for our health in somebody else's hands. So really what I'm asking you to do is take responsibility for your health, and not in an anxious way. You know, to be able to say, okay, I get it. And 33 years, I still get setbacks. And usually it's because I've been pushing too hard, you know, and that's just my nature. And right now, and I'm speaking to everybody, but especially Emily, because you brought it up, you're just observing. You're observing what this means to you. Think about that neurologist I told you about, by the way. He went on to be the head of MS research at Oxford University in England. So he was no dummy. And you know, the first 2 years is as you're getting to know your body with MS. And you know what? You're always getting to know your body with MS. And
stay away from negative MS groups.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There's lots of negative MS groups out there, eh, Michelle? Like to say things like MS sucks, or, you know, it is what it is. And if it is for you, then I would suggest learning how to make friends with it. And I'm not talking about rolling over and playing dead here. I'm talking about some self-compassion, so that you're not beating yourself up every time something happens. You know, it's funny because you don't realize until you've got a diagnosis of something that stuff's happening with your body all the time. It's just when somebody puts a label on it, all of a sudden, it becomes the first thing you think about when you wake up in the morning. Yes, stay away, for sure. What's that?
From the groups, she's saying.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get that. Okay. So we don't have as many questions tonight as we did the other night.
Did we have some unanswered questions from before?
Sorry. Yeah. So Michelle is making the comment that negative energy attracts negativity in everything you do. And that's true. And I think, you know, these are the things that are showing up in the science now. I mean, traditional medicine, and when I'm talking about traditional medicine, I'm talking about the medicine of cultures that are hundreds and thousands of years old. They have always understood this, and they have always honored it. And by the way, they have always put the mind-body health at the forefront of health. So now, of course, we're understanding how if we surround ourselves by negativity, that actually changes our physiology. It actually changes how the cells behave in our bodies. So it puts us in a negative state.
Have you talked about exercise routines as far as stress resilience?
No, but that's another good point. As far as relieving anxiety, what's action relieves anxiety? And those are words that resonate for me I went through a horrendous time of anxiety when my mother passed away. And action relieves anxiety. So get outside and go for a walk, go for a swim, go for a bike ride.
Unless it's -30 in Saskatchewan.
Right. But I happen to know Emily's in Mississippi, and it's not -30 there, right?
We're going to do some mall walking. That's on our schedules for us to do.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, folks. Well, a shorter talk tonight for sure, but probably one of the most important elements of health, and one that just keeps sewing a thread through our lives time and time again. So every time you feel out of control, I want you just to think about some of the things that we've talked about today, which is stop, breathe, go for a walk, catch yourself stewing about things that happened before or things that might be happening, and bring yourself back to the present moment. And you can continue to add questions if you'd like, and I will continue to answer them.
So Jack Cornfield, was it said, when he's really stressed, he meditates for at least half an hour. If he doesn't have time, he meditates for
That was not Jack Cornfield. That was Gandhi.
Oh, there you go.
So, you know, that little Indian guy called Gandhi, that's what he used to say. He meditates once a day. When he's really stressed, he meditates 3 times a day. So that's just the power of that grounding in that mind-body medicine. Okay.
Meditations. Are you going to do a meditation for us? Not here now, but do you want to create a video?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
He's just making all kinds of work for me, isn't he? Anyway, I've got a number of meditations, and what I will do is watch the Facebook page. I will, in the next 2 weeks, I say 2 weeks, it'll probably be the next week, I'll post a meditation for you. In the meantime, check out fragrantheart.com or calm.com, the app, and get started. And I'm interesting, so share your stories and your experiences and your struggles and your frustrations with me on the Facebook page, and we'll get back to you with some encouragement, if nothing else. Okay? Very good. Have a wonderful evening, and what a wonderful time of day to meditate. It's a very yin time of day. It's a very quiet time of day. The best time of day to meditate, first thing in the morning, a very yin time of day. Last thing at night, very yin time of day. So, blessing to you, and have a wonderful evening. Good night.